and indeed yesterday, with temperatures of about 25 degrees centigrade. And there is Nelson Piquet, ever cheerful as ever these days. On his right, Paul Rocher, on your right rather, Paul Rocher, the brilliant BMW development engineer. Sylvia, Nelson's girlfriend, on the left, and in front of Nelson Piquet, the reigning world champion, who finished in, third position here in the last South African Grand Prix, which was in October. And he put in an absolutely searing lap in the final timed practice yesterday. Went round in 1 minute 4.9 seconds, which is 3.5 seconds inside Alain Prost's 1982 lap record. And there is the 1982 world champion, Keke Rosberg. And you can see he's looking very sharp these days as he talks to Patrick Head. He had a virus infection at the end of 1983, but he's been away to Mauritius and overcome that completely, and he's in absolutely sparkling form. It was in this race last October, that Keke, smoking I see, and Frank Williams won't like that because he's very much against it, but Keke last year finished in 5th position in the Williams Honda. On your left is Patrick Head, the Williams designer, and Keke Rosberg is in 2nd position on the grid for the start of today's race, having been for a long time yesterday in pole position until Nelson Piquet went out and did that terrific lap. There's the lineup, and in 3rd position, as you already know, I'm sure, and it's only the 2nd time he has been as high up on the grid as this, is Nigel Mansell in the JPS Lotus, 1 minute 5.13 seconds. Going on very quickly down, Tambay in the Renault is in 4th position. There is Nigel Mansell, who's just been chatting with Tambay. They are amazingly relaxed. On the left is Barry Griffin, and Nigel, I think Patrick Tambay has got up and walked away to his car. Patrick Tambay 4th position on the grid. Alain Prost in the McLaren is in 5th place. There was Patrick Tambay just walking through your picture. The very interesting thing about this morning's warm-up is that Nelson Piquet was fastest, but Niki Lauda was 2nd fastest, having got the car set up beautifully. Theo Fabi was 3rd fastest, and Alain Prost was 4th fastest, so that means that both the Brabhams and both the McLarens are in the top 4 positions. Elio De Angelis was 5th fastest, and you can just see the front of his car, roughly in the centre of your picture, that's number 12. And René Arnoux, as you look at Patrick Tambay's Renault, René Arnoux has improved this morning. He was 6th fastest, but he's only starting 15th on the grid because the Ferraris, and there is Maurice Philippe in the glasses, is Ken Tyrrell, and by the way, Martin Brundle is now starting 25th on the grid because Pier Carlo Ghinzani, the Italian in the Osella, had a very, very heavy crash this morning at about 170 miles an hour. That's Theo Fabi, the 2nd man in the Brabham team with Don Halliday on your right, who works with Gordon Murray. I was telling you that Ghinzani had a very heavy crash at about 170 miles an hour. His car was totally destroyed, burnt out, but Ghinzani, mercifully and very, very luckily, is all right apart from a few minor burns. And it was some very... here we are. Look at this. There's Ghinzani getting out of the car, struggling. He falls, he's lifted. You'll see in a moment. There's Ghinzani collapsing on the ground. Meantime, the fuel from the engine, which had caught fire and which had been severed from the car, you can see the engine in the middle of the road there, to the right of your picture, had caught fire. The fuel tank had ruptured, and the flames spread along that fuel into the ruptured fuel tank, in which there would be, 200, if he had full tanks, and I should think he did, about 220 litres, and the fire marshals and the South African marshals acted superbly. One of them actually took a calculated risk and squirted fire extinguisher foam onto and around Ghinzani's helmet because the flames were going up towards his nostrils and he was frightened that his lungs might be seared. Well, Ghinzani, as I say, seems to be all right. You can see the engine lying in the track there. It was all subsequently cleared up, and the final 15 minutes of the warm-up was completed. And as a result of Ghinzani non-starting, his place was taken by the 27th driver who had failed to qualify, Thierry Boutsen, the Belgian, so he's starting in 26th place on the grid. And there is the pole position man, Nelson Piquet. with behind him, I should think, an estimated 750 horsepower from his four-cylinder, inline, turbocharged BMW engine. And I talked to Nelson last night. He was amazingly relaxed, very confident. He feels that he has exactly the right package, but he says today's race is going to be so much harder than the last South African Grand Prix, in which you may recall he started on half-empty tanks, very soft tyres, sprinted away, had a superlatively good pit stop. There's Gordon Murray crouching down beside him, the Brabham designer. And Piquet, in last year's South African Grand Prix, came in, did his pit stop, and even allowed himself to drop down through the field, knowing that if he finished as high as fourth, he would still be world champion. And there is Keke Rosberg, and here is James Hunt.
Yes, it looks really as if we've got very much a Brabham v McLaren race, because as Murray was telling you earlier, the Brabhams and the two McLarens made the first four in the warm-up, but then there was a gap of something like 0.8 of a second before the next contenders. However, Brabhams are a little bit worried that they're not going to go the distance. They've got a problem with their turbocharger running too hot, and are worried that they may blow the turbos on their car. They put a lot of additional ducting to try and keep them cool, but because Piquet does look to be quite a strong favourite if he can go the distance. Prost ran very well in qualifying, everything's gone well for him, but Lauda had a lot of little niggling problems with his car over the weekend. He had more trouble with his engine, mainly with the engine not getting it to run correctly, and he had some this morning, so one really just has to keep one's fingers crossed and hope that both teams have got everything sorted out. And there we see Nigel Mansell in his JPS, who incidentally qualified very well and is really seeming to come onto top form now. He's got the Lotus car is really well sorted out, fully competitive this year. Back to the whole grid now. We've got about just under 3 minutes to go, so they'll be starting to clear the grid. Well, they should be clearing most of the people now. Just mechanics should be left to start. I haven't actually seen the 3-minute board go up yet. It has been up, but I'm surprised they aren't getting more people off the grid. They get a 2-minute board, and then at 1 minute they start their engines, and they get a green flag, and they set off on their paced warm-up. That, when I say paced, it's paced by the pole position man, and he'll want to bring them round in formation, which at this circuit, with a long straight leading up to the start line, he can do quite easily. Bring them up in formation so that they don't burn their clutches while they're sitting there with their feet on the clutch too long, or boil the water in the radiators. Remembering, of course, that unlike a normal road car, these cars don't have any fans, and therefore the cars depend on moving forward through the air to keep cool. So when they sit still with the engines running, they get hot pretty quickly. Final check on Keke Rosberg's car. Very good showing, really, from the Honda engine in the Williams team. They've quite obviously, from Keke's qualifying performance, has got plenty of power, and it seems to have run very reliably so far. And we've now got the 1-minute board, gone straight to 1 minute, so they should be clearing the grid. Engine should be started. Yes, there we go. They, of course, inject the starting power. Now, what's that? That's Alan Prost being pushed to one side, or is it a spare car? It's empty anyway, so what is going on with... Well, he's vacated his grid position. And I do hope that he's going to be all right. His grid position is empty. That is his race car. They pushed him off the grid, and that will be a terrible blow. It looks as if it's terminal, because nobody seems to be rushing about the car at all. Maybe they're running to try and get him into the spare car and send him out at the back. I should think that's what they'll do, because obviously that car seems to have been abandoned. Nobody's trying to mend it. And here we go, off on the warm-up lap. So we'll hope and pray that they can get Prost into the spare car. He'll have to start, I expect, from the pit road. Oh no, they've got him no joy. They're pushing his car away. So here they come on the warm-up lap down this long, long straight where Nelson Piquet was reaching just on 200 miles an hour. His actual readout on the speed trap here was 319 kilometers an hour in the warm-up, which is pretty well exactly 200 miles an hour, so that's quite quick. They go through that second gear, slow right-hand, and then they accelerate down this hill, as you see, into a very fast right-hand sweep, followed immediately by a left-hand sweep. But of course, with all the grip these cars have got, they now take these completely flat out without any problem. And they go up the hill. That's incidentally where they're coming into the picture is where Ghinzani had his most unfortunate accident this morning, but fortunately he doesn't appear to have been seriously hurt. And Alain Prost is now coming out of the pits in the spare car, so he's going to try and join at the back of the grid, so he will at least be able to start with everybody else. Now, having come through that fast right-hand sunset, this is down to second gear, clubhouse bend. This is the twisty part of the Kyalami track. And then a short straight and into this right and then left S-bend. And then a quick squirt. And there goes Alain Prost. Picked him up, so he's in the spare car. There he is. He will have caught them up if he gives it a bit of stick by the time they get round to the start line, because the pole man will be leading him pretty slowly. And here is the field coming up the little short hill and up onto the slowest corner on the circuit, where the cars go pretty light over here. And that's all the corners completed. And now onto this long, long straight. They've still got some half a mile to go before they get to the actual start line.
But what a tragic start of the race for Alain Prost. I remind you that he is leading the World Championship of 1984 after his victory in Brazil, and was starting off in a very confident mood this morning. Now, also, those of you who follow motor racing may remember that the same thing happened to John Watson here last year, and he actually made a terrible mistake and joined the grid in the position he was supposed to be in, had he in the qualifying terms, rather than at the back of the grid. So let us hope for his sake that Alain Prost does not make that mistake, for if he does, he would be disqualified. Well, here he is. I can see him in the background as you look at the grid, with Nelson Piquet on the right, with Keke Rosberg on the left, and Alain Prost has joined at the back of the grid and is staying firmly there, which of course he is supposed to do. And we wait now for the start of this 76th lap, 193.8 mile South African Grand Prix. On the line, there's a lot of activity, and Prost is pulling right to the side of the course now. This is an amazing development, and there's a lot of marshals milling about at the back of the grid. You can't see them. I can. Now there is Prost. Now what is happening? He mustn't come up into position.
Well, I suspect the team have taken a ruling, and I think they're putting him into the pit road, and he's going to have to start from the pit road, possibly. He's off on, well, he's on the left, on the entrance there, you see, of your picture. He's going into the pits. Now, the rules are a bit unclear, and as Murray rightly said, Watson messed up last year on that, and did himself no favours as a result. There goes Prost into the pits, and they've delayed it. It looks like they're aborting the start after all that fuss, because as I said earlier, they can't sit there with their engines running too long. The clutches overheat, so I think they're going to do a 3-minute new countdown. So they'll 3 or 5 minutes, is it? But they will then send them off round again, and we'll redo the whole thing. But Prost, I would imagine, will have to start from the pit road. Well, at least anyway, they've got time to clarify what he has got to do, what the rules say, because people are pretty unclear about this sort of thing, and if these two be doing the right thing and not getting themselves disqualified.
This is the second Grand Prix of 1984, and it's the second Grand Prix where the start has been delayed. Because in Brazil, Andrea de Cesaris had that broken gear linkage and sat in his car waving his arms furiously, as a result of which the race was restarted, or rather started, some 25 minutes after it should have been, with de Cesaris starting from the pit lane. And Alain Prost must obviously be very unhappy. Obviously, neither James nor I have got the remotest idea what's wrong with his car. It was something that developed while he was sitting on the line waiting for the lights to be changed by Derek Ongaro, the official starter. And it's probable now, of course, that we will have a lap less in the race as Nigel Mansell sits in his car in third position on the grid. So let's just recap that the start of the South African Grand Prix has been delayed, as was the start of the Brazilian Grand Prix, because something went wrong with Alain Prost's Marlboro McLaren. It didn't go. They did the first warm-up lap, and then we had the drama of Alain Prost pulling off at the back of the grid because he must on no account go up into his proper position. And we are now literally waiting developments. As there, Patrick Tambay, a familiar figure last year in the Ferrari, was controversially fired, and Michele Alboreto took his place. And now the charming and amiable Frenchman is driving for Renault, fourth fastest on the grid. Not as quick as I'm sure as he would have liked. There's Jean Sage talking to Peter Waugh. Bottom right corner is Peter Waugh, the JPS Lotus team manager. In the centre of your picture now is Jean Sage, as Piquet sits impassively. Very, very worrying time for drivers, of course. They don't really know what's happening. Although nowadays, and for some little time, the team managers have been able to talk to their drivers through electronic intercom equipment which is in their helmet. And this is Alain Prost being pushed down the pit lane, not down the course. Although there's Ron Dennis walking in front of him. You can see for yourself there is 3 minutes to go to the start of the South African Grand Prix. And there will have to be another warm-up lap as Prost is being pushed down the pit lane. Now this is clearly what is happening. The race will now start. I will take a guess that it's going to be, until officially confirmed, over 75 laps rather than 76 laps. Alain Prost is being positioned at the end of the pit lane, just where it joins the dip in the straight down to Crowthorne Corner. There it is, that's the exit. And incidentally, the South African Grand Prix pits here at Kyalami were supposed to have been rebuilt before the next race after last year's, because they are now the narrowest in the Grand Prix world. And the ATS and the Tolman teams have actually had to take their pits right to the far end, out of the official pit lane. But because of the limited time, the last South African Grand Prix was in October, and here we are in March. There hasn't been time to do it. So a dispensation was made, and there is Niki Lauda. And I can now tell you something that was told to me in great confidence and could dramatically affect the outcome of this race. Niki Lauda is starting on a softer tyre compound than his teammate Alain Prost, with whom there is a great deal of rivalry. And we have to wait and see whether the drivers are going to come in and change tyres. Now, I know the problem for Prost. His fuel valve was frozen, and this is very much a sign of the times. Keke Rosberg there, as the fuel limitation calls for not more than 220 litres of fuel in the cars. Many of the teams actually freeze the fuel so that they can make it denser and get a greater quantity of petrol into the tank. Now, if that sounds double Dutch or Chinese to you, I can only tell you that that is what happens. Renault in particular have got a very impressive and complicated refrigeration plant, and most of the teams in some way cool their fuel. Big problem in Brazil, that was, because the start was delayed for 25 minutes with frozen fuel in the tanks, and there was a great danger that it might thaw, expand and break the tanks. Mercifully it didn't. Right-hand row, Nelson Piquet. Behind him, Nigel Mansell. Behind him was to have been Alain Prost, and is now Elio De Angelis. Left-hand rank in the yellow and white Williams Honda with his blue helmet showing Keke Rosberg, second fastest. Behind him, you can just see a touch of the basically yellow Renault. And then Theo Fabi, who is behind Tambay, sixth on the grid, and was third fastest in the warm-up. Here we go for the second warm-up lap.
Yes, well, here we go again. Since what was to be the original start, the clouds seem to have lifted a bit. Half an hour ago, we looked as if we had quite a danger of rain. The local experts have confirmed that, but the clouds have lifted, and the weather always in this part of the world comes from over the town to Kyalami, and I'm looking straight out at the town, and the sky now looks quite clear. So, down the hill after the first corner, into the fast sweeping bends, taking absolutely flat out. They're getting up to something like 170 miles an hour by the time they come out of the second one, and then they come along the short straight, hard on the brakes, third gear right-hander, probably the best corner on the circuit, the most interesting. From the driver's point of view, we can really get stuck in and throw the car through there. Then a short straight, and again hard down on the brakes into the left-handed clubhouse corner, which is the second gear corner. Accelerate hard again for a short time, up a couple of gears, back down one into the little S's, where there's a little bit of banking in the left-hand part. They can get a good sweep out of there, and then up the hill to the slowest corner on the circuit, taken in second gear, and as the car gets over the apex of the corner, it goes over a bit of a hump, you see, up the hill, and then it goes light just there where the car is, and they tend to get a lot of wheel spin at the back coming flying round. And then they out onto the main straight. They're now just coming onto the kink, which of course is not a kink at all for them.
As you will have gathered, we have had a temporary power failure at Kyalami, but the electricity is back, and you look down on the grid with Alain Prost sitting patiently in the pit lane, waiting to join this 75 lap now, I reckon, race. Piquet in the foreground, and he's left again at the start. Piquet, as in Brazil, is left at the start, but not nearly so badly, and as the Brabham come through into second place, but as they come down to the right-hander at Crowthorne, it's Keke Rosberg leaving as Alain Prost gets away from the pit lane, and you can see now the gap between Alain Prost, the Brazil Grand Prix winner, and the pack, which is making its way round Barbecue Bend, down to the Yunkai sweep on lap 1, onto Sunset Bend, the right-hander, and it is Rosberg leading. Piquet is in second, Fabi is third, Lauda is fourth, Warwick or Tombe is in fifth position, and then the other Renault immediately behind it. Then it's Nigel Mansell in seventh place in the JPS, followed by Jacques Lafitte in the Williams, and here they come through the S's. It's Rosberg, it is Piquet, it is Fabi, first, second and third, Lauda in fourth, in fifth it's Warwick, then it's Tombe, there is Patrick Tombe in sixth position. They now round the right-hander at Crowthorne, one of the slowest corners on the course, up to the kink, and Piquet, after that poor start, is right up with the leader, Rosberg.
Yes, and I think he's going to sweep past Rosberg. Yes, he's pulled out of the tow, and Piquet takes the lead as expected, and Fabi's having a look. Well, Piquet's made quite a recovery after that absolutely appalling start that he made, his second one running, because he made a mess up of it in Brazil, but it didn't take him long to get back on top. One of the Lotuses also was having trouble picking up and getting away. I think it was Mansell, but he's recovered and has got going, and he was causing a bit of fun as they pulled away at the start. Now, the thing is, Rosberg, we're not expecting to be very fast in race form. He was wonderfully fast in qualifying, but he's the odd man out of this leading group. He's the only runner there on Goodyear tyres, that top half dozen or so, and the Goodyear race tyre has not shown up as well here as the Michelin ones. They haven't been so quick, and they've generally been in a bit of trouble. So Rosberg will be fighting at something of a disadvantage out there and holding them up probably.
Yes, it looks to me as though there's a bit of a traffic jam behind Keke Rosberg with Teo Fabi third. There is Lauda in fourth position. In fifth place it is Derek Warwick. Sixth it is Torbay. Seventh it is Mansell. 2 laps completed and Fabi goes through. The Brabhams are stunningly fast on this section of the course. Teo Fabi, that's his skid things on the underside of the car, making sparks.
Yes, the cars are running, of course, absolutely chocker full of fuel, so they're very heavy at the moment. And they do have, as Murray says, proper skid plates on the bottom to protect the rest of the chassis, but there seems to be an awful lot of bottoming going on at the moment. So, Piquet will be well pleased to see Rosberg still creating a little bit of a breather for him behind, with only his teammate passed so far. And Lauda doesn't look so fast on the straight. I think he may have a little bit more trouble than the Brabham, who is quite exceptional, but he's got more grip, and I think he's going to try. No, well, he was having a good look, but he will be keen to get past Rosberg as soon as possible. He obviously isn't confident he can do it on the straight, otherwise he wouldn't have been bothering to try then. And of course, he's also got the Renaults breathing down his neck, so at the moment, Niki Lauda's got his hands very full.
The 2 Brabhams lead. Rosberg still third, Lauda fourth. There is Derek Warwick in fifth position, followed by Torbay in sixth place. It's Elio De Angelis seventh. Then it's Alboreto eighth and Lafitte ninth. And Lauda's going through and taking Rosberg as the skid plates of Fabi's Brabham hit the deck. Now is Niki Lauda, who has fought his way past the comparatively slow in terms of the first 3 Williams Honda, going to be able to close the gap on his slightly softer tyres on Nelson Piquet, the race leader, and Piquet's teammate Teo Fabi, who is sharing his time between Grand Prix racing and kart, spelt with a C, racing in America.
Yes, the one thing that Niki is going to have a problem to, if he can catch those Brabhams, is getting past them, because they're very fast on the straight. The chassis is handling very well, but what Niki may not know is that they are very worried about their fairly small turbocharger on the car, and it was running too hot for their liking, and therefore in danger of blowing itself up. And the Brabham team were quite worried about that. As far as the tyre situation is concerned, of those top group, the interesting man is Derek Warwick, who's the odd one out of all of the Michelin runners. He is running a harder compound and is hoping possibly to be able to do the whole race without stopping. Whether this is a good policy or not, I don't know. Lauda tried it in Brazil and it didn't work for him, because when he actually broke down, he was going to have to stop the tyres anyway, because his left front was completely worn out. But Warwick, so far, seems to be at no disadvantage with his harder compounded tyre.
And now Alain Prost will be trying very hard from the back of the field to close up, as you still look at Keke Rosberg third, Warwick fourth in the Renault. In fifth position it is Patrick Tambay. There's a bit of a gap developing between Warwick and Tambay, not much of a one, and Elio De Angelis is closing on Tambay. So behind the Brabhams, 1, 2, there is Lauda, who is now right with Teo Fabi. Then there's the Williams Honda, then 1, 2, 3 Renault-powered cars, and Michele Alboreto, who Prost is in 16th place. He started 26th with half the length of the distance between the pits and Crowthorne, between himself and the last man, and he has already, and we are now on lap 6, worked his way up to 16th position. Here's the leader, Piquet, Fabi, Lauda, first, second, third, Brabham, and McLaren, with BMW, and TAG turbo engines.
Well, behind that group, Derek Warwick seems to be at some sort of a loss to get past the very fast and straight line Williams Honda of Keke Rosberg, and I would suspect that his harder compounded tyre might just be hurting him, in that it's traction on the corner onto the straight, and he's losing a lot of ground coming onto the straight, a lot of ground for Williams Honda, and then can't get into the slipstream and get close enough to pass him on the straight. You see, now he claws it back on the slower part of the circuit, Warwick, but when they get onto the straight, he will, with the harder tyre, may not quite have the grip, and the car goes light. Get a lot of wheel spin now. We shall see, because there is Keke Rosberg doing exactly that, going onto that corner where the car goes light, but he's got enough air in front of Derek Warwick right now.
Nigel Mansell is in 11th position as you look at Warwick, who's got Torbay behind him, who's got De Angelis behind him, and there is Michele Alboreto closing up, and Jacques Lafitte. And the positions now are with the leaders in Piquet, Fabi. There's the third man, Rosberg. Behind him in fourth position, Lauda. Then it's Warwick, Torbay. De Angelis is in seventh place. Alboreto is eighth. Lafitte is ninth. Winkelhock is 10th. Patrese is 11th. Nigel Mansell is 12th. And the leading non-turbo car is that of Stefan Beloff in the Tyrrell in 18th place. As we look at Warwick, Torbay. Behind, there goes Warwick round the left-hander, chasing Keke Rosberg. Third, fourth, fifth, sixth cars virtually together through the S's. On this, the seventh lap out of 76, so it's just about 1/11th distance. And meantime, the three leaders are pulling away from this battle for fourth position. And I think the answer is that the Renaults and the JPS Lotus number 11 of Elio De Angelis have just not got the power that the Brabhams and the McLaren have got, because the Brabham and McLaren were able to pull past on the... And there is Elio De Angelis pulling out of Patrick Torbay's slipstream to have a look, and going back again at Crowthorne Corner, round that right-hander, which is some 115 miles an hour, round the barbecue bend, into the Yunkai Suite. Fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, Michele Alboreto struggling a bit in eighth position in the Ferrari, an unaccustomedly low place. And Jacques Lafitte in the second of the two Williams Hondas is still in ninth place. 10th still Wolf Winkelhock, 11th in the Alfa Romeo, Patrese, and in 12th position Nigel Mansell.
Yes, just very disappointing for Nigel Mansell. He qualified so well, and if you were watching carefully at the start, you would have seen the car appear not to accelerate properly. It wasn't that he got a bad start, he got going, and then something must have gone wrong, got a misfire or bad pickup of the engine. He lost a lot of ground with a whole lot of cars going around him.
The gap between the leader, Nelson Piquet, and Teo Fabi is 1.3 seconds. This is the battle for fourth still. Rosberg, Warwick, Torbay, De Angelis, and then Michele Alboreto. Last you see was Jacques Lafitte. Nelson Piquet, who led for so long in the 1983 South African Grand Prix at the end of the year, before deliberately backing off in order to ensure finishing and thereby win the World Championship without necessarily winning the race, because he didn't want to risk breaking the machinery, is in a class of his own at this meeting. Pole position, leading the race. Teo Fabi holding that second place and enabling Nelson Piquet to pull away, and we are now on lap 9 out of 76. And fourth, Rosberg, fifth, Warwick, sixth, Torbay, seventh, De Angelis, eighth, Alboreto, and that in the background was the ninth man, Jacques Lafitte. And these four cars, three of them with Renault engines, V6 turbos, and the leader with the V6 Honda turbo, are very evenly matched on performance. And I still think that Keke Rosberg is holding them up a bit, because you'll notice that number 27 there in the scarlet Ferrari, Michele Alboreto, is starting to catch the four cars in front of him.
Yes, Alboreto is going very well, because he, of course, is also running a Goodyear tyre, which, sadly for them, doesn't seem to be quite as good here as the Michelin one. But at the same time, Rosberg, although he's, I think, holding him up a little bit, he's not holding him up a lot, because you see now he's opened a bit of a gap, and then it seems to spread out. But I think Warwick would very much like to get him out of the way, so he could at least try to chase the leading three.
It's significant that the Goodyear tyres are all radials in this race. This is the first year that the company has gone on to radial tyres, and they have been extremely quick in practice. And there goes Lauda taking second place. Niki Lauda is taking Teo Fabi on this, the 10th lap. So the order now is Piquet and then Lauda.
And Fabi almost getting back at Lauda. Lauda came past him so early on the straight, but he's held on. So Lauda confirmed, as it were, his second place. I think Fabi may have made a little mistake out of the hairpin onto the straight, because Lauda gobbled him up under acceleration then. But Lauda will be well pleased. Now he's got the man he really wants to get at in his sights, and he can start having a go. Maybe Fabi's in trouble, actually. Fabi's dropping back so fast, I think maybe his engine's lost a bit of power.
The veteran of Grand Prix racing, number 8, Niki Lauda, 35 years old, world champion as long ago as 1975, then again in 1977, after that dreadful accident he had in 1976. Now there's Piquet, there is Lauda. The gap when I last took it was 3.7 seconds, and as James says, it's a quite significant gap between the Austrian, there he is, and Teo Fabi, the young Italian, in third position. And now you see the gap between, on the right, Nelson Piquet, the leader, and following him in the red and white McLaren, Niki Lauda. 16 years of Grand Prix driving, and this is with... And it's Teo Fabi's coming into the pits, is he? Yes, Fabi on lap 12 into the pits, and that will certainly not be for a tyre change, although they may change them. He's obviously in trouble with his turbo flaming. That doesn't mean to say the car's on fire. Now, I've started my stopwatch, and we'll see they were doing a pit stop in 8 seconds or so this morning when they were practicing, the Brabham team, superbly drilled, and my goodness, they've done it again. From wheel stop to wheel start, it was 8.3 seconds, and even quicker than that on the digital readout that you got. And he joins Teo Fabi, he joins the circuit behind Riccardo Patrese, who is in 13th position, and ahead of Ayrton Senna. So a very, very quick pit stop, but not... The thing that's baffling me, James, is why he should have a pit stop this early in the race for tyres.
Well, maybe one of the tyres went off, but just a little bit overworked. Something's gone on here because there's a lot of dust around, unless it's just one of those helicopters taking off, because that creates a huge dust storm. But we didn't see any sign of any accident, fortunately, which is a good thing. But I think he probably may have blistered the tyre or just overheated it too much and had to go in very early for tyres. But that doesn't augur well necessarily for the other Michelin runners, including, of course, Niki Lauda, who we're looking at now, and Nelson Piquet, his teammate. And of course, it could mean that Goodyear have done the clever thing and gone on a slightly harder comp.
And now on lap 13, you look at the second place man, Niki Lauda, chasing Nelson Piquet with Fabi in third, into the pits. And by the way, Mansell is now in 11th place, Brundle is 20th, and Alan...
Here indeed is Niki Lauda charging on. He's about to lap one of the Ram Hearts. It's Philippe Alliot who's running at the back of the field. Already Nelson Piquet has passed him. Niki Lauda briefly stuck behind the slower car, although he's through now. Quickly down the order, Piquet the leader, Lauda in second place. Keke Rosberg is still third. Derek Warwick behind him in fourth place with his teammate Tombe. There's De Angelis sixth, Alboreto seventh, Lafitte eighth, René Arnoux.
The positions at the present moment on the 14th lap, leading Piquet, second Lauda, third Rosberg, fourth Warwick, there is Warwick, fifth Tombe, there he is, sixth is De Angelis, seventh is Michele Alboreto, and then is Jacques Lafitte, and René Arnoux is the second of the Ferraris, who went very well in the warm-up, is climbing up through the field, and the Frenchman is now in 9th position.
Fifth, there is Rosberg in third place, Warwick fourth, and the other Renault-powered car, the second Lotus of Nigel Mansell, is down in 11th place. Martin Brundle, the man who was a magnificent fifth in Brazil, despite his lack of turbocharged engine, is currently 20th. And of course, having no turbocharger here, 6,000 feet above sea level, really is a handicap, and the non-turbo cars simply aren't competitive. They just haven't got the speed for that long straight at this altitude. Up the hill.
Mit einem Jahr Verspätung ist Derek Warwick doch zu Renault gekommen, hat zum ersten Mal in seiner Karriere in Rio geführt. Sie erinnern sich sicher an die 290 Kilometer Karambolage zwischen Warwick und Lauda. Beide Fahrer haben sich quasi gegenseitig entschuldigt, wie Herr Lamy, für diese Karambolage. An sich war Lauda bereits vorne, nach ungeschriebenem Gesetz für den Fahrer, der vorne ist. Die Kurve, Warwick hat aber nicht nachgelassen und so hat dann sein linkes Vorderrad gegen das rechte Hinterrad von Lauda geschlagen. Beide Fahrer haben sich die Kollision hier in Karan im Fernsehen mehrmals angeschaut und sich, wie gesagt, dann gegenseitig entschuldigt. Warwick Conway.
Through Leurkop goes the battle. Oh, and once again, Lauda has to pick his way past one of the Rams. This time it's Jonathan Palmer, but it hasn't worried Lauda at all. He's quite comfortably sitting there behind Nelson Piquet, and I think that Lauda, very, very canny driver indeed, I think he's decided not to keep the pressure so much on Piquet as to sit behind him and await developments. Don't forget that there are pit stops for both of these drivers to come. There's, what, half a second or less between them at the moment. They're that close. And I think that Niki Lauda is going to just sit on Nelson Piquet's tail and await developments. Once more, up to Leurkop. There's the fastest lap of the day, 69.689 seconds, over 131 miles an hour. And bear in mind that they're all on full tanks still, because no fuel stops this year. They have to run the whole race on their 220 litres of fuel, so they're still very heavy in terms of weight of fuel. Once again, down the long straight, they're passing the Spirit of Mauro Baldi. No trouble at all as they go past, with Lauda tucking in as they go into Crowthorne, down to Barbecue Bend, on towards the very fast Yukskai sweep where Ghinzani came to grief this morning. Now, what is Piquet going to do? Is he going to go all out to try and shake Lauda off, or is he going to play the same sort of waiting game that Lauda is? They don't want to run this race at a higher pace than they need to, because remember, fuel consumption is critical. But Lauda does get very, very close to the Brabham on the straight, on the corners. It's on the straights that the Brabham is able to pull away. Interestingly, the Brabhams have two different turbocharger setups for qualifying and for the race. They use a big turbocharger in qualifying. They use a smaller one in the race, which delivers less power but is meant to be more reliable over the longer distances. However, here today, they are using the large qualifying turbocharger. Whether that's going to have any effect on the reliability of the engine remains to be seen, but it's certainly meant that it's very, very fast in a straight line. This is Martin Brundle being lapped in the Tyrrell, and there's no question which is the faster of those two cars. Into Crowthorne goes Lauda. Briefly, the Tyrrell is between Piquet and Lauda. So Piquet is past, Lauda is not yet. Lauda sits behind the Tyrrell, and briefly, there's the blue flag for the blue Tyrrell. Now Lauda goes alongside and goes ahead. So for a moment, Piquet had quite a cushion. And it'll be interesting to watch now how long it takes for Lauda, the man who's already set the fastest lap of the race, how long it takes Lauda to close back up to that Brabham. It's not taking very long. Look through the back section, through Clubhouse, through the S's, up towards Leurkop. The McLaren closes right up on the Brabham again, and it's not until they get to the long, undulating 200-mile-an-hour straight where that big turbocharger on the Brabham BMW starts to take effect, and Nelson Piquet is able to draw out a little bit of space from the ever-present McLaren. Through the flat-out right-hand kink over the brow. Lauda taking a much closer line, keeping out of the slipstream there, but he's nothing like close enough to attack as they go into Crowthorne. Third gear, 120 miles an hour. Up into fourth gear, out of Crowthorne, down to the next right-hander, which is Barbecue Bend there. Now on through Yukskai Sweep. Note Piquet's line, using absolutely every inch of the road, straightening the circuit out as best he can. There's the first six with no change still. Warwick, Tombay and De Angelis, after 18 laps, are still 4th, 5th and 6th. But what about the progress of the other McLaren, We're watching McLaren number 8 in second place, but McLaren number 7 of Alain Prost, which started from the pit lane, it's the spare car. We understand the reason, incidentally, for Prost's delayed start was a frozen fuel valve.
Theo Fabi, denn der Italiener kommt jetzt ein zweites Mal herein. Niki und Lauda haben die gleiche Reifenmarke, auch genau die gleichen Reifen gewählt, 05. Das sind die weichsten greifbaren Rennreifen. Nummer 4, der Deutsche Stefan Beloff. Beloff ist ein Star der Langstreckenweltmeisterschaft. Wird in Deutschland als großes Talent bereits gepriesen. Muss sich in der Formel 1 natürlich noch hinten anstellen. So, wenn er sich jetzt nicht bei den angreifenden Weltmeistern Niki und Lauda unbeliebt machen will, dann wird er sehr bald die Ideallinie freigeben müssen.
Few minutes. Niki Lauda, the red and white car there, pressing the world champion Piquet all the way, and suddenly Piquet gets into trouble.
And has already been lapped by
in third
Piquet,
place, Rosberg. Fourth is Warwick at the moment.
And Lauda second in the Marlboro McLaren. Fabi has been into the pits again, and Alain Prost in the second McLaren is up to 8th position now.
And suddenly Piquet has tyre problems.
Now they're doing 200 miles an hour as they come down to Crowthorne, and again Niki Lauda runs wide. Again Nelson Piquet cuts in, and they'll go through the twisty bit with Piquet leading, Lauda second.
Yes, it's a very clear demonstration of the power and aerodynamic advantages that the Brabham has got. There's no doubt that the Brabham is the slipperiest of top-line cars in the business. That's always been a speciality of Gordon Murray's, to make very aerodynamically effective cars. But he's also obviously got a power advantage as well, because you could see him pulling away under acceleration. So now you see that Niki knows what he's got to do. He's working hard to make his move here, but this is too late. He's got to do it early in the lap too, so that by the time he gets to the straight, because he's going to need 50 yards to hold off Piquet down the straight. So there's no point in trying here. Last corner. He's just got to keep as close as he can until and try and force Nelson into some sort of an error. But Nelson also will know the advantage he's got, and is therefore very unlikely to make an error, and he's putting an arm up. Maybe he's going into the pit. I think Nelson's going in for tires, probably. Yes, he is. Nelson into the pit.
And Niki Lauda takes the lead in the South African Grand Prix, and we will be able to see how Nelson Piquet's pit stop compares with that of Theo Fabi. Stop and start the stopwatch. And it's absolutely critical now that they get these wheels changed quickly. The McLaren team have been practicing, and we don't know whether they are going to bring Niki Lauda and later Alain Prost in, and that was in 7.5 seconds according to my timing. Slower than that of Theo Fabi, who, by the way, has been into the pit for a second time. And Niki Lauda, look, that's an indication of how quick he is, because he's joining with Derek Warwick, who's in 4th position, just with Elio De Angelis now ahead in 5th place. That was
Renault's are 3rd and 4th, De Angelis is 5th, and there is Piquet in 6th place. Alain Prost has come all the way up to 7th, so a wonderful midfield tussle there, with Prost on Piquet's tail. Piquet is on cold tyres, but at this rate, it's not going to take him long to warm them up. That's Tombe, De Angelis, Piquet, Prost, and Alboreto just behind them is 8th. Piquet has got his fresh tyres. He's in 6th place now, and that looked pretty early to me. Don't forget, it's a 76-lap race, and he's made his tyre stop on lap 22, so we can only guess that, like his teammate Theo Fabi, he had put rather too much punishment through his original set of tyres, but he's already made up a place. He's already passed De Angelis, so he's now 5th. He's going past Tombe. He's going straight into 4th place. Tremendous progress up the field. So, as Derek Warwick laps the Spirit at the front of the picture there, that's Piquet with Warwick ahead of him. Piquet now in 5th place. in fourth place, I should say, splitting Warwick and Tombe. So Lauda still the leader, Rosberg is still second, Derek Warwick is still third, but on fresh tyres and absolutely charging, Nelson Piquet coming up to lap Mauro Baldi in the Spirit now. And nothing is going to stop this man's progress now. He's got his fresh tyres, and it may well be, as we were saying, that his first set of tyres had had a lot of punishment, and that was why he wasn't able to hold off Niki Lauda. He realised he was going to lose the lead to Lauda sooner or later, and so into the pits he came. And he's now on his fresh tyres. He's past Baldi. He's going up the hill into Leeuwkop. Now, how long is it going to take him to close on the battling pair in front of him, which is second man Rosberg and third man Derek?
And the gap with Niki Lauda in the lead is 26.7 seconds. As down to Crowthorne they come. Rosberg in better position. Warwick third. Piquet fourth. Tombe fifth, De Angelis sixth, then Prost seventh, Alboreto eighth, and Jacques Lafitte in ninth place. And one of the best packed scraps we've seen in a Grand Prix for a long, long time, going on behind Niki Lauda, who's nearly half a minute ahead now, and could easily come into the pits, change his tyres if he had to, but we don't know whether he will. Teammate who started right at the back as Piquet comes through and passes Warwick and moves up into third position. Now he has got Rosberg, so it's Rosberg second, Piquet third, Warwick fourth. Look through the picture, it's Tombe fifth, and behind Tombe is De Angelis in seventh position, and right with De Angelis is Alain Prost, who is gaining hand over fifth. And we are now on lap 25 out of 76 as we look at Nelson Piquet absolutely rocketing through the field with his what he calls Bavarian horsepower from the BMW engine. See him pulling away now from the Williams Honda of Keke Rosberg, who is in third position, and Derek Warwick, who is in fourth. Those two together.
Yes, and Alain Prost finally managed to struggle past the Lotus at the end of the straight end. So look, he's been stuck there for some little while, but a really electrifying scrap going on there. You see now there's Prost, now he's attacking Tambay, and he's got a bit of a problem of not being super fast on the straight as well. And Piquet having worked his way very easily through that group because of his prodigious straight line speed advantage, is now pulling well away. Derek Warwick still hasn't got the legs on the straight to do anything about Rosberg in his Williams Honda. Now, can he like Lauda, should be looking for a way past around the back of the circuit somewhere, because he must be beginning to get a bit frustrated. As I said before, he's running a harder compound than any of the other Keystone runners, and I think that although they hope they could possibly go the distance without a stop, I think that's pretty unlikely. Things seem to be fairly hard on tyres. Piquet's pit stop was claimed, the news we had from the Brabham pit, to be routine. It was quite early for a routine stop, but then of course the tyres do get a harder job at the beginning of the race because of the extra heavy fuel load, and after sort of 25 laps that's quite substantially light, so a third of it has gone, over a third.
Martin Brundle being lapped for the second time by Piquet. There's the battle for third between Rosberg and Warwick in the Williams Honda and the Renault. And see now, in fifth position, it's Alain Prost. What an incredible drive this Frenchman, 29-year-old Alain Prost, is having, because he's up into fifth position, and it's not going to be very long before he's forced his way past, first of all, the Renault, and then the Williams Honda, I think, in which case he will be in third position, in which case the McLaren will be first and third.
Yes, his problem, though, Marius, we've seen in that group, he's not very fast on the straight, and having a lot of difficulty getting past people. It took him several laps to find a way around De Angelis, who admittedly was taking the inside line down the straight and trying to send Prost around the long way, although he finally ducked down the inside at the last minute. But he may have a bit of trouble with the Honda engine Williams when he gets up behind that. And of course, bearing in mind that Warwick has the advantage of having a tow from the car in front of him when they get onto the straight. So Prost undoubtedly very, very quick in the chassis department, but his overtaking ability is limited. But he's beautifully placed now to get a good tow from Warwick. We'll see if he's got the legs to get past him.
And they're lapping Martin Brundle, who's going extremely well with the Racing for Britain decal on the side of his car. And there is Keke Rosberg in second position, Warwick third, Prost fourth, De Angelis fifth, who has got ahead of Patrick Tambay now, who is in sixth position. The sixth, fifth, fourth, third and second cars virtually together on lap 28. And I'm amazed at how little car mortality there has been. Barbie has been into the pit twice, and in these hot conditions, a lot of people were expecting the turbo cars to wilt a bit. Brundle has been lapped now by Keke Rosberg for the second time. And behind Rosberg is Warwick, behind Warwick is Prost, and here comes the Finn. It's Rosberg, Brundle lapped, then Warwick, then Prost, then De Angelis, then Tambay. And there is Elio De Angelis in the John Player Special Lotus, followed by Patrick Tambay, the ex-Ferrari man. They come out of Leo Cop into the straight now. There's certainly going to be some changes here. Brundle looking very sensibly in his mirrors. He keeps to the side. He lets Warwick through. He keeps to the side. He lets Prost through. Next will be De Angelis to pass Martin Brundle, and then Patrick Tambay. And De Angelis is past him. And Patrick Tambay in the Renault, 1 minute 9.45, 132 miles an hour, and that's still 1.1 seconds off the lap record of Alain Prost in 1982, and on lap 29 in this fascinating South African Grand Prix, as you look at Keke Rosberg second, Warwick third, Prost in fourth position, Niki Lauda is leading, and has got a very, very convincing lead indeed. But it's anybody's race for second place. If any one of these drivers puts a foot wrong, misses the gear, takes the wrong line, which is unlikely, there'll be a change. Rosberg, Warwick, Prost, then De Angelis, and there in the red and white car, number 7, Alain Prost, up from 26th at the start. And this is Piquet touring in. Is it Nelson Piquet on the straight? It's definitely a Brabham. It is. It's Nelson Piquet on lap 30. Trouble for the Brazilian, the world champion, who has no points because he failed to score in Brazil. What has happened to the Brabham BMW as Nelson Piquet goes into the pits? The man who led for a long time in this race until caught and passed on lap 21 by Niki Lauda. And so Piquet, in that terrific second position that was, comes into the pits, and now we must watch and see what action the Brazilian takes. If the seat belts come undone, Lord Murray crouches down beside him, and there's obviously a major problem from the discussion and consultation that goes on, and it's something at the left rear of the car, and Nelson Piquet retires on lap 31 out of 76. The Brabham BMW is out, and that's 2 races in succession that the reigning world champion has failed to score points. And the race order now is Lauda leads, Rosberg second, Warwick third, Prost is now in 4th position, Elio De Angelis is 5th, and in 6th position it is Patrick Tambay, followed in 7th position by Michele Alboreto.
Well, my only guess of Piquet's trouble could be turbocharger problems. They were not expecting, but suspicious that their turbochargers might not go the distance, and we do know that Fabi was put out with the stated reason that he had no boost, which of course is a turbocharger-connected disease. So it could well be that. But now Prost still struggling on the straight. He's going to have to really try and find a way round Rosberg, who's driving absolutely marvellously in the car probably hasn't got quite as much grip as the others. He's using the power it's got very well indeed. Prost is beautifully placed, but he was at the start of the previous lap, and well placed at the start of the previous lap, and it didn't do him any good at all on the straight. Rosberg just drove away from him. He's perfectly placed again this time. Now let's have a look and see if the advantage of a slipstream can do anything to make up for his obvious disadvantage on straight line speed.
Prost, number 7, from Sainte-Croix into the pits again. My goodness, this is an unbelievable race. Alain Prost, who went into the pits to start the race, comes into the pits now. Is this a routine pit stop? Indeed it is. Alain Prost then having a tyre change, and it was by no means certain that he was going to, but if they did do that, Ron Dennis told me, Prost gets away 13.1 seconds, and in the background is Patrick Tambay. So there's going to be a big reshuffle now of places in the top 6 as Tambay comes out of the pits with Alain Prost. And at the end of the 32nd lap in this 76th lap race, as we looked at Niki Lauda, Lauda is leading, Rosberg in 2nd place, and up into 3rd position has come Michele Alboreto in the Ferrari. As we look at Keke Rosberg, who is still in 2nd place, there is Elio De Angelis. Into Crowthorne, there's one of the Ligiers, and Rosberg goes very wide. Beloff gives a sign to Derek Warwick behind, pass me on the right, and Warwick does so. Then Elio De Angelis will pass the lanky German, number 4 in the Tyrrell, and he's done so.
Yes, Piquet's problem was the turbocharger, so Brabham's clears, sadly for them, turned out to be on solid ground. And that was a routine stop from Alain Prost then for his tyres, as expected, and I think Lauda was expecting to come in on about lap 34, so he's due in pretty soon, but I would think that Lauda now has a big enough lead that he can get in and out and still keep his lead. That's probably what he'll be hoping anyway. If all goes well, he should just about be able to do that.
2nd, 3rd and 4th you are looking at. The last 3 cars in this collection as the Ligier goes through. Keke Rosberg is 2nd, Warwick is 3rd, De Angelis is 4th, and there is the 1982 world champion was Rosberg, round Leo Koch. Now they come up to the Ligier with its V6 Renault engine, and it is Andrea De Cesaris who is in 11th position and about to be lapped by the 2nd, 3rd and 4th men. There you go, lads, over to the right, he says, and Keke Rosberg does so in 2nd place. Warwick does so in 3rd place. De Angelis does so in 4th place. In 5th position behind De Angelis now is Alboreto. In 6th position behind Alboreto is Jacques Lafitte. So the 2 Williams Hondas are doing well. They are in 2nd and 6th places. And this is a race where in the closing stages, reliability is definitely going to count.
Lauda's coming into the pits. He's routine stop for Niki Lauda, we think. Yes, there we are. Murray driving the watch. You won't want to be stationary for more than 10 seconds. You'll be happy with anything under 10 seconds. He's comfortable lead. Any dramas? All seems to be going well. Yes, a good one, 10 seconds. He gives it a bit of a wheel spin, getting out of the pits. Now, yes, I'm looking down the straight, and he's well clear, and he's still come out with a very healthy lead indeed.
Yes, as Lauda goes into Crowthorne, the battle for 2nd places emerges from the kink, and the gap between Lauda and Rosberg now is 10 seconds after, that is, he has completed his pit stop. Now he's going to be going a bit slow on this lap, which is the 35th, because he's on cold tyres. I don't think that the McLaren team have any way of heating them, although it's pretty hot here at Kyalami. It's about 25 degrees, so it's not nearly as bad as it would be at some of the European circuits in terms of getting the rubber warm and giving it the maximum grip on the circuit. But nevertheless, Niki will have to go carefully. He's closing up on Ayrton Senna, the Brazilian in the Tolman, as they come up to Leo Koch, and Lauda is coming through to complete his 35th lap. which is not very far off half distance. There he is coming up to Senna. Senna's second Grand Prix. And I noticed the front of the nose of the Toleman is missing. The wing is in position there. Lauda's going to come through. Then he's going to close up on Patrese in the Alfa Romeo in the green. That's the green car in its new livery. He passes very smoothly Ayrton Senna, who politely moves over and lets him through. And the double world champion, Niki Lauda from Austria, although he currently lives in Ibiza, is on his way with his pit stop completed.
Yes, things look very good for Niki now. The only thing he's got to watch for is just to be very careful with the new set of tyres he's put on, that he doesn't get them too hot. He's got to take it gently, but he's already lapping faster than the people behind him, that battle for second place. And there they are, still battling away. Derek Warwick desperately trying the whole race to find a way past Rosberg in the Williams, who, to his great credit, has made no mistakes, not given Derek a chance at all, and that's very good quality driving to go that long like that. But of course, every time they get to the long straight, off he goes, and Derek can only sit and watch his back view get smaller and smaller until they get back to the twisty bits again.
And this race is definitely, we are now told, over 75 laps and not the scheduled 76, and that of course is due to the aborted start, the extra warm-up lap which reduced the distance from 76 to 75. Second Rosberg, third Warwick, fourth De Angelis, all together, and we are now on lap 37, and Lauda still of course leading by a considerable margin.
Yes, I mean Derek Warwick, I would think, is hoping against hope that Keki's going to go into the pits for tyres very soon. Now, Derek is, as I said at the beginning, going to try and go the distance on one set. He's using a harder compound, and it doesn't seem to have hurt him for speed very much. He's been able to run and even outrun his teammate Tambay, so he's certainly got no problem with grip. It's just a question of how fast the wear is on this slightly harder compound than the other top Michelin runners are using.
4 different makes of car in the first 4 places. The lead, the McLaren of Niki Lauda. In second place, the Williams Honda that you look at now of Keke Rosberg. Third, the Renault of Warwick, who's really crowding the ex-world champion now. And in 4th position, and Elio De Angelis is right with the 2 in front of him in the JPS, and Lafitte behind in 5th place. And there goes into the pits Derek Warwick, sure enough. Now, Rosberg into the pits. Now let's take a time on this. Keke Rosberg, who was second, has allowed Derek Warwick to go through into second place. Starts the stopwatch. And the fastest one we've had so far is of the order of 9 seconds. And it's so very often the left rear that causes trouble. That's clear. And out. And he's almost stalled him. Keke Rosberg having trouble getting away. That would have lost him a lot of time. That could well be critical. And there's another tyre change going on there as the Fitz blasts out of the pits. And that means to say now that Niki Lauda is leading. Warwick is second. De Angelis is third. In 4th position, it is Jacques Lafitte in the second of the 2 Williams. And in 5th position, it is Michele Alboreto. 6th is Rene Arnoux. And there is Keke Rosberg now frantically scurrying through the field. Clear track in front of him. He's lost time, more time than he should have on that pit stop. But no matter how you practice, first of all, and there's been a lot of practice this morning, first of all, you haven't got the adrenaline of the occasion to make you make mistakes, and things get hot, and there is Warwick into the pits. So that's the new second place man who only held that second place for 1 lap, and he's in for new time.
Yes, critical for Derek Warwick to get away, and they've certainly made a very good stop. So, all things being equal, he should get back on the road comfortably in front of his Achilles heel of the day, which has been Keke Rosberg, behind whom he's been stuck for the whole race. And I can't even see Rosberg here, and Rosberg just passing the pits now. So Derek is well clear of him, and that should, when everybody's stopped, leave him in a clear second place.
So now on lap 39. Niki Lauda out on his own in the lead. In second place now is Elio De Angelis in the JPS Lotus. In third position it is Jacques Laffite as Warwick fairly hurls the Renault out of Clubhouse Corner, down into the S's, round the right-hander and up the hill, and it's quite a steep hill towards Leocomp, the second gear right-hander at about 115 miles an hour, up through the gearbox now, down towards the Kink, which is about 155 miles an hour. Winkelhock going into the pit. Number 3 is Martin Brundle being lapped again, but Brundle is keeping going, and there may well be some turbo car mortality before this race is over, because we're only just over half distance on lap 40 now out of 75. There is Derek Warwick. He's lapped Brundle in the Tyrrell, and Martin Brundle is getting some real race experience. He went the distance, finished superbly in 5th place at Brazil, more than justifying that Racing for Britain help that he had in his Formula 3 days and is now shown on the side of his car. And Warwick going through, and at the end of this lap, which Niki Lauda has already completed, Derek Warwick is starting to gain, is he, on Elio De Angelis. I'll take the time as the Italian goes through and he's coming into the pits. Elio De Angelis is coming into the pits to make his pit stop, and that means to say that Derek Warwick will automatically move up a place. It's now, there is De Angelis.
Yes, the critical thing is whether De Angelis can get a fast enough stop to go out on terms. It looks good. One wheel a bit slow. Left rear again. Well, it's not as quick as Derek Warwick, so probably, and in fact Warwick has just gone through, and so Warwick is now clearly, well, once the dust has settled, going to be in a clear second place.
And Martin Brundle had to take some violent avoiding action there as Elio De Angelis came out of the pits. And this is where Mike Doodson's lap chart is absolutely invaluable, because I can tell you that Niki Lauda now leads. In second place it is Jacques Laffite. In third position it is Michele Alboreto. In fourth position it is Alain Prost. And there is De Angelis, who's lost about 3 places. He's coming up to Martin Brundle, who, it's very interesting, Martin Brundle is the non-sponsored Ford DFB powered, much slower car, because the JPS Lotus there must be developing nearly twice the horsepower of Brundle's car, and yet Brundle is keeping ahead extremely well of Elio De Angelis, and I don't think the Italian is going to take the Englishman until they get well onto the straight down to Crowthorne Corner. Lap 42 out of 75, Niki Lauda leads. In second place it is Jacques Laffite. Third place Alboreto, and into the pits now comes De Angelis with, in fourth place, Alain Prost. In fifth position it is Mansell, and in sixth place Patrick Tambay. Behind Patrick Tambay is Derek Warwick, of course, who's made his pit stop, and you can see the second of the 2 JPS Lotuses, and there's a secret weapon there in the JPS Lotus pit, the man with the backpack. And it is so secret that I can't tell you exactly what its purpose is, but it's a very, very long stop with Bob Dance, the veteran chief mechanic of the Lotus team, bending over the left front wheels to talk to Elio De Angelis, and there is some major problem. Nigel, his mechanic, is taking the part of the, not the side pod, the whole of the top cover comes off Elio De Angelis, and the Italians' race must, to all intents and purposes, be run, as we look now at Alain Prost, who is in third place, catching Jacques Laffite. You now look at the battle for third position between Jacques Laffite in the Williams Honda, who is in second position, with Prost behind him in third place, and very soon, I prophesy, it is going to be Barbara McLaren in first and second places, Lauda leading. Prost is in third place at the moment, but I think he's not going to be there for very much longer unless the wily racecraft veteran Keke Rosberg can keep him back, and how hard he will be trying as they come up to Leocomp. And this is where Prost may, if he stays as close to Keke Rosberg as he is now, be able to pull out of the Finn slipstream and go through and take second place, and he does it. Alain Prost is through into second place on lap 44 with Niki Lauda leading.
Fast, tag turbo-powered McLaren, but Prost is pulling away already. Lafitte is almost out of that slipstream. They've got one of the arrows ahead of them, one of the Cosworth DFE-powered arrows ahead to be lapped. That's the Belgian Thierry Boutsen, who only just scraped into the race because of Ghinzani's accident this morning, which...
40. Runde. Das heißt, Lauda könnte auf Prost nach 1 Sekunde pro Runde verlieren. So viel könnte er sich leisten, langsamer zu fahren, um trotzdem noch zu gewinnen. Prost Zweiter, Lafitte Dritter.
Fire at the back of the Lotus. De Angelis is back in the race. They've worked on the car. He's obviously well down. There is Ayrton Silva de Senna, still with no nose cone on the Tolman, about to be lapped by the second man, Alain Prost. And as you saw from the caption a short while ago, almost half a minute, 27 odd seconds between leader Niki Lauda and second man Alain Prost. And as we were saying about Lauda and Prost from Brazil a couple of weeks ago, the best position to be in is if you're in the lead and it's your own teammate in second place defending you from behind. But let's remember, still 31 laps to go. That's around 80 miles of motor racing ahead of these cars, and it was in Brazil that Lauda had just the same sort of comfortable lead over his own teammate, and he dropped out. There is Prost, number 7, in second place. It's Jacques Lafitte third. He hasn't stopped yet. It's Alboreto in the Ferrari fourth, and I wonder if either of those two drivers are intending to stop at all, or whether they're hoping to do the full distance on the hard tire. Nigel Mansell is fifth in the Lotus.
Klagelegt kann ich Prost nicht mehr besiegen, weil er die Autos genauso abstimmt wie ich. Üblicherweise profitiert man ja in der Formel 1 davon, indem man sein Auto besser auf einen Kurs abstimmt als der andere und dadurch ein schnelleres Auto hat und dementsprechend schneller fahren kann. Prost aber bevorzugt genau die gleiche Abstimmung wie Lauda, und darum sind die beiden Autos immer gleich schnell, und Lauda steht also heuer vor einer völlig neuen Situation, was seinen Teamkollegen betrifft. Ein Problem, das er schon seit 7 Wochen mit sehr viel Kopfarbeit zu lösen versucht. Laudas Einstellung ja nicht verkannt, zu versuchen, mit vollem Risiko, aber auch mit voller Freude, Kampfbereitschaft, Einsatzbereitschaft an die Aufgabe heranzugehen. Prost zwingt Lauda heuer schneller zu fahren, keine Frage. Eine neue Herausforderung für die Karriere von Niki Lauda.
Just remember, he hasn't stopped yet. Derek Warwick is 6th and Patrick Tombe is 7th. Those are the two Renaults. And Keke Rosberg is now in 8th place. Alain Prost, second place man. Over the brow, onto the long straight. The fastest section of the circuit here at Kyalami. And it's still very, very hot indeed. Perhaps the heat may have played some part in the failure of the two Brabhams, both Nelson Piquet and Theo Fabi out of the race. It was only the McLarens that were really able to match the early race pace of the Brabhams, and they've so far anyway been able to do it with reliability. Both the McLarens still going in first and second place. That's Prost once more, going through the back section along the Yook Sky sweep. Top gear, a flat out left-hand kink. And that's Patrick Tombe in the pits. A second stop for Renault number 15, and you can see how blistered those rear tyres are. So a new set of Michelin for Renault number 15. Tyre troubles for the Renault team. And although it's a nice quick stop by the look of things, yes, 10.5 seconds, it's a very good stop. But 2 pit stops is not what you want when you're battling for championship points and when all your rivals have only had 1 tyre stop.
Die Renaults sind weit zurückgefallen. Derek Warwick ist 6. Tombe war vor seinen Boxen. Stopp 7. 47 44. und der erste.
So, as Tombe goes back into the race, we look at Derek Warwick and Nigel Mansell. Warwick has now gone ahead of Mansell. Mansell still with a stop to make, 28 laps remaining. And they've got once more that Thierry Boots and Arrows between them. Thierry Boots and Arrows now being lapped by Nigel Mansell in Lotus number 12, but Derek Warwick has gone ahead of him and pulled away. So Warwick now 5th, Mansell demoted to 6th, and I think we could see Warwick starting to close on the Ferrari of Alboreto. There is Alboreto. Senna in the Tolman between them, once more to be lapped, but Derek Warwick now with the bit really between his teeth, closing on Alboreto. Clearly the sole surviving Ferrari, number 27, is attempting to do the entire race on one set of tyres, and that could well mean that Alboreto's rubber is getting a little tired. Warwick with fresh rubber on the Renault, closing rapidly on the Ferrari for 4th place. Still Jacques Lafitte is 3rd in the Williams. Still, of course, Prost 2nd and Lauda 1st, and nobody looking like catching those very, very rapid McLarens. But lots of excitement, lots of battle over the subsidiary positions. Lafitte 3rd. And I think he's not going as quickly as Warwick either. Warwick with his crash helmet bobbing around in the cockpit on the bumps of Kyalami, making up yards of tarmac on Alboreto all the time. There's Boutsen in the Arrows. Behind him, 22, the green car with the red nose, was the Alfa Romeo of Riccardo Patrese, currently running in 10th place. But Derek Warwick really charging, really anxious to make up for the bitter disappointment he had in Brazil 2 weeks ago, when certain victory was snatched from his grasp by broken front suspension. Alboreto and Warwick in the Renault charging up behind him. Lafitte quite a way in front of them in 3rd place, but I think if Warwick keeps this pace up, then Lafitte is going to be coming under pressure from the Hampshire driver in the Renault also. Alboreto being caught all the time as they go through Clubhouse Corner, down into the S's, up the hill into Leocock, and on the top straight, that's...
And Derek Warwick in the yellow and white Renault, number 16, in the blue helmet with the blue winglets behind him to the side of his wing, is definitely catching Alboreto. It's Lauda, Prost, Lafitte, Alboreto in 4th position, Warwick in 5th place. This is the beginning of lap 50. Now watch Warwick. Alboreto, of course, knows he's there. You can see him big in his wing mirrors. Round the right-hander at Barbecue Bend. That's 155 miles an hour. On to the Yook Sky Sweep in top gear, approaching 180 miles an hour. Breakdown to 4th gear for Sunset, and Warwick comes up and shows Alboreto the nose of his Renault. Just a reminder that he's still there. Sunset.
Warwick's trying very hard, but of course, as far as I know, Alboreto hasn't yet made a tyre stop. I imagine he would be doing that. In which case, I would have thought it would be coming pretty soon. So the battle could be resolved that way, although I don't think he'll be able to stand this sort of pressure from Warwick on now quite fresh tyres, which is an advantage at this stage when he's been out there soldiering on what are now fairly worn tyres. But the Ferrari is quick on the straight again, and Warwick is closer, a better pace than he was the last lap, and in fact he's ducked out of the toe. Will he be able to stay there for speed? Well, they're absolutely side by side, and Warwick has the inside of the corner at the end of the straight, so that is that battle resolved, I would say. Oh, Alboreto's leaning on him. Well, dear, oh dear, they were absolutely side by side at the end of the braking area, but close there it was. Warwick has got it, and he now, I expect, will drive pretty rapidly away from Michele Alboreto.
Warwick is 4th, Alboreto is 5th. Nigel Mansell is 6th. We've still got Jacques Lafitte in 3rd place. It's, in engine terms, Tag Turbo, Honda Turbo, Renault Turbo, Ferrari Turbo, and Renault Turbo. 2 McLarens in the first 2 places. A William...
Alboreto, 6. Mansell, 7. Tombe, 8. Rosberg. Ist Alio. Sie sehen noch einmal dieses harte Überholmanöver. Warwick gegen Alboreto, aber im Gegensatz zu Rio vor 13 Tagen kam zu keiner Berührung und jetzt der erwartete Boxenstopp bei Tyrrell. Ist aber mit Wasser nachfüllen und Reifenwechsel nicht getan. Wird an der Radaufhängung gebastelt. Stefan Below.
Oh, Uncle Ken Tyrrell won't be too pleased about that. There's Patrick Tambay and Elio De Angelis, both of them well done. Tambay after his 2 stops. And I think that was a Lotus that they just flashed by. I think Nigel Mansell's in problems. I think that you saw a glimpse there of Nigel Mansell as we see Tambay and De Angelis, both of them out of the points at the moment. De Angelis is right at the back of the field after his long stop. Yes, it was Mansell. Mansell in the pits. So Mansell, who hasn't made a tyre stop, comes in now. But from the speed he was doing, the rather slow speed that he came, that's a great shame because Nigel Mansell, who was very well placed, we go back to Tambay and De Angelis. Tambay, who is moving up, in fact, after his second pit stop. We've now got Tambay on the lap chart in 6th place, so he is getting back into the points. And
Erinnern Sie sich, wie Niki Lauda vor Beginn dieser Saison gesagt hat, man wird jetzt wieder mehr das Tieren benutzen müssen. Die Ära.
No doubt very disappointed. He crashed out of the Brazilian Grand Prix. He's retired today, so still no championship points in 1984 for Nigel Mansell. There's the new 6th man, number 15, Patrick Tambay with the Renault. A glimpse there of the other yellow car, 14, is Manfred Winkelhock, the German with the ATS. He's right at the tail of the field. He's another man to have spent some time in the pits.
Kommt ja also von der Box. Das ist Nigel Mansell, der aufgegeben hat. Nigel Mansell, Lotus, nicht mehr im Rennen. An 6. Stelle ausgeschieden, damit 6. und in den Punkterängen jetzt Tambay. Und hinter ihm De Angelis. Naja, Tambay musste also an Bord quasi alle Berechnungen durchführen. Vom Spritanzeiger, der ihn nur erkennen lässt, wie viel Benzin er verbraucht hat, ablesen, wie viel Sprit er noch zur Verfügung hat.
And our commentators, James Hunt and Murray Walker.
And you join us on lap 54 in this 75-lap race as you look at Alain Prost in the McLaren, who is in 2nd place behind his double world champion teammate, the great Niki Lauda, who is coolly driving on to his 20th Grand Prix victory in his long career. So Lauda leads. Prost is in 2nd place. Nigel Mansell, by the way, has just retired from the South African Grand Prix at a time when he was in 6th position and the last person in the race, apart from the 5 in front of him, not to have been lapped by the leader. So Mansell out, as is Nelson Piquet on lap 31 with a turbo problem. And it is Lauda leading, Prost 2nd in the, if you like, the junior Williams Honda, because Keke Rosberg, as an ex-world champion, takes precedence. Jacques Lafitte is in a fine 3rd position on lap 55 and holding his place well. In 4th position is Derek Warwick, who has stormed his way past Michele Alboreto's Ferrari and pushed the Italian down to 5th position. Then in 6th position and lapped is Patrick Tambay in the Renault, and in 7th position it is Elio De Angelis in the 2nd of the 2 JPS Lotus cars. And we look here at the Marlboro McLaren of the great Niki Lauda, certainly, and that is the Williams Honda out of the race. And I'm frantically trying to identify, and this demonstrates beyond all doubt how absolutely ludicrous the new numbering system is, because it's virtually impossible to find the number on the car. I'm looking at the people in the background, and I'm sorry, I just can't tell you whether it's Keke Rosberg's car or Jacques Lafitte. It's Rosberg. We think it's Rosberg's car. Well, we'll have to take a check on that on the lap chart. And there is Patrick Head, the Williams Honda designer, who is obviously looking at the television monitor and worried about his cars. He will know, of course. And now, yes, it's Keke Rosberg, and on the 56th lap. Rosberg is out of the South African Grand Prix, having finished 5th in last year's race, his first drive in the Williams Honda. And there is Niki Lauda leading, coming through to complete another lap, and the lap that he completes is his 56th, and I'll give you the gap between himself and the second place man, his teammate Alain Prost, which is a very considerable one. Indeed, Lauda has managed to come into the pit, change his tyres, and still retain that lead. Lauda, Prost, Laffite, Warwick is in 4th position. In 5th position, it is Michele Alboreto, and in 6th place, Patrick Tambay. There's Lauda, out of clubhouse, into the S's, 3rd gear, about 135 miles an hour, exit in 4th, back into 2nd gear for Leo Koch, and he's coming through now to complete lap 57 in this race of ever-changing fortunes.
I think Derek Warwick's possibly coming into the pit. I just saw a Renault coming in there. More tyres. So that's Warwick in for more tyres. And that was, I was just actually timing the gap on him and the beat, but of course now it'll be a very big gap indeed. So that's 2 tyre stops Warwick has had to make. And that'll be a great disappointment for him because he's been going so very well in this race, and it just shows you how critical these choices of tyres are, and how careful the drivers have to be too when they're new, not to overheat them.
Well, Derek Warwick was in 4th position when he came into the pits, and that means to say that Michele Alboreto in the Ferrari will have taken that position. And I have a feeling in my bones that we're going to see some more changes, because we are now on lap 58, 75 laps. That means to say there's 17 laps to go. Nigel Mansell retired with a lack of boost in his Renault engine. And since it's a 1.5-litre engine, V6, which depends on the turbocharger to give it, it's 750 or so horsepower in practice trim anyway. If you haven't got any boost, there really isn't any point in continuing. But Elio De Angelis is certainly doing so, the leader of these 2 cars. He's actually been lapped by Derek Warwick before Warwick went into the pits for his new tyres, and we're now on lap 59. And Niki Lauda has just got to drive home now. He's got to watch his boost, he's got to watch his tyres, and of course he's on his 2nd set of tyres, so there should be no problem at all with them. He's probably turned the boost down a bit now, as Nelson Piquet has done so many times in the past in his Brabham, and of course he is out of the race, Nelson Piquet. And you're looking at Elio De Angelis in the JPS Lotus, the Italian, leading on the circuit, Derek Warwick in the Renault. And Derek Warwick is down to 7th place behind Elio De Angelis, who is in 6th position because coming in for that pit stop cost Derek Warwick those places, and he's now trying to climb up through the field again. Lauda leading, Prost in 2nd position, and still in 3rd place, Jacques Laffite, as Derek Warwick drives out of Elio De Angelis' slipstream. And that says a lot for not only the driving ability of Derek Warwick, but also the aerodynamics of the Renault. And De Angelis trying his hardest to bob and duck and weave and get round the side of Warwick before they enter Crowthorne. Derek Warwick staves him off. They go round the right-hander at Barbecue, down to the Jungskai sweep again, down to Sunset, braking hard. Prost, I remind you, in 2nd place, having driven through from the 26th position at the start of the race, a quite incredible drive, beaten only by his teammate Niki Lauda, and he will no doubt make no effort to pass the Austrian, because I'm quite sure that they will be getting pit signals from the McLaren team to tell them to hold position. There is Niki Lauda, and he's coming up to Alfa. First of all, he's got to pass the green Alfa Romeo of Riccardo Patrese, who is well down the field. Indeed, Patrese, number 22, who has just been passed by Lauda, is, I think, in 12th position. And now Lauda is up to Ayrton Senna in the nose-led Coleman, still running strongly, passing him. And now he's up to Michele Alboreto, and Alboreto is in 4th place. So Lauda has lapped everybody up to 4th position. Alboreto 4th, Laffite 3rd, and there are. I was a little ahead of Nicky. I was going to say there goes Lauda through into 2nd place. Sorry, to lap Alboreto, he's leading, of course. And he's got Derek Warwick tied up behind him. So Derek Warwick is catching Alboreto. This is absolutely intriguing. You're looking at Alboreto in 4th place, Niki Lauda, the race leader, and behind Alboreto, Derek Warwick, who, having disposed of Elio De Angelis, is now catching the Ferrari of the Italian, trying to take 4th position, having been into the pits and lost a lap to change his tyres. Now we're going to see the interesting situation of the relative speeds between the McLaren and the Ferrari, and just see the way Lauda drives past Alboreto.
Just don't forget, Murray, though, that they'll be playing with their boots at this stage, so it's not, we can't really form a clear impression, because Lauda has obviously turned his boost right down, but probably to deal with the gaggle, he would have risked turning it up, and may well have turned it up higher than his normal averaged out boost for the fuel for the length of the race, just to clear himself of that group, because he'll and now that he's got to Mayer, he'll probably back it right off again.
Well, let's see. There's Nicky. And remember, Niki Lauda was leading in Brazil very convincingly, having put it across his teammate Alain Prost. Extremely important to him. He said earlier on in the season he's got 2 problems, and one of them is Prost, his teammate, because he wants to beat him all the time. He's coming up to Martin Brundle now to lap the Englishman again, but Martin Brundle keeping going extremely well. Niki Lauda in the background, leading the South African Grand Prix, coming up to complete his 62nd lap, and behind him the gap between Derek Warwick and Alboreto is about the same in this battle for 4th position, and here it is. There's Alboreto, and that is Laffite, the second of the 2 Williams Honda cars out of the race. We've seen Keke Rosberg go out. Now we see Jacques Laffite go out, who was in 3rd position. So that means to say that it's now with Laffite out of the race, it means that the battle between Michele Alboreto and Warwick is resolved in favour of Warwick, and Jacques Laffite, obviously puzzled. He'd be bitterly disappointed, because it would have done so much for his self-confidence to have finished well up in the points in the Williams Honda in this race, but it was not to be. So Jacques Laffite checks the ignition, sprints away from the car, and number 5 is out of the race. Still no points in the World Championship, and Niki Lauda comes down to Crowthorne again, and it's Lauda leading, Prost 2nd, Alboreto 3rd, Tambay in 4th, Warwick in 4th position, and it's McLaren 1st and 2nd, Ferrari now 3rd, and then the 2 Renaults 4th and 5th. Well, we haven't seen a lot of Niki Lauda. We're deservedly and rightly seeing it now in this race, because he has been... I said earlier on that Piquet was in a class of his own, and so he was at the time when he was leading so convincingly. But now Niki Lauda is most certainly, of the remaining runners, very much in a class of his own. Recovered superbly, first of all, from that dreadful fiery crash he had at the Nürburgring in 1976. Then in 1979, in Canada, he decided that he wanted to race no more, and controversially and surprisingly, he stepped out of his car in practice for the Canadian Grand Prix and said, that's it. He was out for 2 years before he came back, and what a bang he has come back with. And look at the battle between Alboreto and Warwick, dodging about from side to side of the Ferrari, with Alboreto just holding his line as they go into Crowthorne, having braked from some 200 miles an hour. And the yellow flags are waving. There's trouble. There's dust in the background. Somebody's gone off, and this is lap 65. Well, Warwick is ahead of Alboreto, and there is the car. It's the Tyrrell. It's Beloff. There's Beloff walking away in the striped helmet in front of the two marshals, the man in the black and grey overalls. So Stefan Beloff off, and it looks like Crowthorne.
Yes, it is Crowthorne. There was lots of dust. Now, the worrying thing is there that Derek Warwick passed Alboreto coming out of the corner under a yellow flag situation. Now, here we see, he went off behind him, so that, I think, crikey, look at that, that's Beloff. But how effective that earth is in slowing the car down, because he didn't actually reach the fence. So I'm not quite sure what the exact situation with Warwick's overtaking now, but if the yellow flag situation had already arisen, then that would be a potential penalty for Warwick.
Complete vindication, too, of the decision by FISA, the governing body of Grand Prix racing, to require the South African Grand Prix organisers to increase the size of the runoff area at Crowthorne, because they thought that after a 200-mile-an-hour dash down to the corner, there simply wasn't enough room if the cars had gone off. The South African authorities willingly conceded to it, enlarged the size of the runoff, put that ploughed, sandy soil down there, and you saw how magnificently and safely it stopped Beloff's car. And incidentally, we've had vindication again today of the safety regulations, because Ginzani's car was passed absolutely 100% safe in terms of design and performance after he'd ploughed into the bank at 170 miles an hour and got away with it. Well, back to the race. We are on lap 67 now as we look at the remaining Tyrrell. Martin Brundle being caught and passed by Elio De Angelis and Alboreto, and you will note that Elio De Angelis has now passed the Ferrari of the Italian. So the positions are Niki Lauda leading, Alain Prost in second place. In third position now it is Patrick Tambay, with fourth Derek Warwick, and fifth will be De Angelis, and in sixth position Michele Alboreto. Alboreto being passed by De Angelis, and we are on the 67th lap out of 75. That's Mauro Baldi's Spirit with its Mark turbocharged engine. Lauda. De Angelis, I must correct myself and apologise, is because of his pit stop several laps behind, so I made a mistake there and I apologise for it, but I certainly confirm that it's Lauda leading. He's coming up to Patrick Tambay to lap him now, and he's in third position. So we are going to have the incredible situation at the end of this race, provided Niki Lauda keeps going, of the great Austrian having lapped everybody in the race except his own teammate. He's about to catch and pass number 15, Patrick Tambay, who is ahead of his teammate, Derek Warwick, who is fourth. Then the Ferrari of Michele Alboreto, fifth, and the Alfa Romeo of Riccardo Patrese in sixth position. And that, my goodness, that's Tambay's car stopping, but drives away again now. He gets away well enough. Maybe he just missed a gear. James?
I think he might be out of fuel. He looks like, because it sort of seems to be stopping and starting. And so that puts Derek Warwick back up into third place again, despite having to have two tire stops. That's Warwick, but going apparently healthily. But it's a little bit early days to expect people to start running out. And there he is, and he's conked out completely. He's actually on the track, which is the most unfortunate place to conk out. They'll push it away, though.
Yeah, he's at Crowthorne, and if he has run out of fuel, Patrick Tambay is going to be livid with rage, because he was furious at losing his third place at Brazil on the last lap when he's standing just to the side of the track. And if it's happened again, he's going to be absolutely furious, because he was talking to me yesterday and he's vehemently against the new fuel limitation regulations. Tombé's view is Grand Prix racing is about cars going as fast as possible for as long as possible and not a fuel economy contest. And now on lap 69 in this 75 lap race, Niki Lauda leads. In second place is Prost. In third position and lapped is Derek Warwick, who is ahead of Michele Alboreto, who's in fourth place. And in fifth place, behind Michele Alboreto, it is Riccardo Patrese. And Francois Hinault is starting to come up into the picture in what is, after all, turning out to be a race of attrition. And Patrick Tambay was fastest on the circuit. 1:08.8 is still about half a second off Alain Prost's lap record. So the Frenchman, and there he is, number 7 in the Marlboro McLaren, is going to have the pleasure at the end of this race, not only have finishing in second place, but still holding the lap record, albeit in a different make of car, Renault.
Yes, Prost has now got it throttled right back. He's not even using all the road, and he's nursing it very, very carefully. But, of course, Tambay appearing to have run out of petrol. Of course, in fairness to the Renault team in Brazil, it turned out that he in fact had a split fuel tank in the car, and therefore it wasn't a question of getting the consumption figures wrong, which was the natural conclusion that one would draw, and we drew, and everybody else did, but they discovered that the next day. But of course the question is now posed as to whether Warwick can go the distance on what fuel he's got, and also if he's seen Tambay, if the Renault pit know, they could signal him to be even more careful, but it seemed awfully early for Patrick to run out of fuel, if that's what happened, unless he split his tank again. If they're putting refrigerated fuel into the cars, that can cause splitting as it expands, and that may well have, that is a possible explanation.
Yes, we can only hypothesize. I would also say that if he has run out of fuel and that isn't the problem, it's proving that Derek Warwick is more feather-footed than Patrick Tambay is and is able to preserve his 220 litres of fuel better. We have, in the interesting situation of rivalries within the team, I think we must say even Steven, between Lauda and Prost in the McLaren team. This is Niki Lauda, because although Prost won in Brazil, it was because of Lauda's going out, and Lauda was leading at the time. In the Renault team, it would seem that Derek Warwick has the edge over his teammate Patrick Tambay. In the JPS team, it would seem on total practice and race performance that probably Nigel Mansell has the edge. In the Ferrari team, most certainly Michele Alboreto has got the edge. René Arnoux has just been virtually nowhere to be seen in this race, and retired some time ago. Indeed, he completed 31 laps, and we are now on lap 72 in this 75 lap race, watching Niki Lauda now just pacing himself home to victory for the 20th time in his long Grand Prix career, having had 24 pole positions, 16 second places, 19 third places, and he's getting very close to Jackie Stewart's all-time World Championship points record of 360. At the moment, Niki Lauda has 335 points, so if he gets 9 for a victory, that will make 344. And there is Alboreto out. The decay is now really getting into the South African Grand Prix. The man who was in fourth position is out of the race to join the previous retirees. That is to say, Beloff, Lafitte, Rosberg, Mansell, Piquet, and the rest of them. And of course, there is Alboreto. Well, Ferrari are having a dreadful 1984. There used to be a time when Ferrari would more or less automatically do well one year and badly the next, but that time has long since disappeared. And we now expect Ferrari to do well all the time, but they are certainly not doing it in 1984. having failed to finish both cars at Brazil, and they're not going to have a car in the points in the South African Grand Prix either. And they are the people who won the Constructors' Championship last year and have won it more times than any other constructor. And that means to say, of course, that Riccardo Patrese in the Alfa Romeo is emulating his teammate Eddie Cheever, who finished 4th in Brazil, by taking 4th place in this, the South African Grand Prix, the 2nd of the year. And there are still 14 to go at the end of this one, in what I think is going to be one of the best Grand Prix years of all time. And Ayrton Senna is now in 6th position. Ayrton Senna is now in 6th position and on a World Championship point in only his 2nd Grand Prix. He was beaten by his great rival in Formula 3 days in 1983, Martin Brundle, who finished 5th in Brazil to score 2 points. And what's that? I don't know. It's Winkelhock. Winkelhock's ATS has blown the motor. Great gout of exhaust smoke and general debris in Niki Lauda's face, and he was lucky to be able to drive through it without losing his line and his lead.
Yes, if you look at Niki's car, he's had a lot of rubbish in his face during this race because there's a lot of oil and dirt on the car. If we get into close-up, you can see on the insides of the wings, it's really very oily there. Now, there's a good shot. See how the front is all dirty, the front wings. Now, what happens to a driver, of course, is you get quite a lot of that on your visor. And if you don't do anything about it, you wouldn't be able to see where you're going by now. So what they do is some drivers wear tear-off strips over the thick visor, these little thin sheets of sort of transparent plastic stuff, which they can just rip off and throw away. Or some of them carry rags. I used to carry a rag in the car, which I just put between my legs, and then I could grab it and wipe, which I found better than messing about with tear-off.
The winner, the prospective winner, Niki Lauda, is on his last lap now, and only the cruelest of fates would deny him his 20th Grand Prix victory after an absolutely magnificent drive from flag to flag. He drove his way through the field past Teo Fabi at the time when Lauda was in 3rd position, took 2nd, then set about Piquet and got ahead of him, and he has stayed ahead all the time, including his pit stop. He is through the S's for the last time. He is up to Leo Kopp for the last time. He will come up to the straight, approaching the kink for the last time. And now he is up to about 155 miles an hour ahead of Derek Warwick, looking in his mirrors. And the great Austrian, Niki Lauda, wins the South African Grand Prix in superb style. His 20th Grand Prix win, and that gives him 9 points. Alain Prost, we wait now to see come through in 2nd position to add 6 to the 9 he already has, and there is the Frenchman, and he will commandingly increase his World Championship lead, which was 3 points before, ahead of Keke Rosberg, who of course has long since retired. So we're going to have a very close thing for 3rd position. Alain Prost out of Clubhouse Corner into the S's for the 75th and last time to approach Leo Kopp, as Lauda has already done long since in racing time terms. And a wonderful, wonderful victory for the McLaren team, for Ron Dennis, for John Barnard, for Alan, for Steve, for all the Marlboro McLaren mechanics who have brought their cars home 1st and 2nd after a famous victory. And just look how happy they are. 1st, Niki Lauda. 2nd, Alain Prost. Now, since the race leaders had lapped everybody up to 3rd position, it means to say that only they will have done the full 75 laps distance, and in 3rd position it will be, and all this is subject to official confirmation, Derek Warwick. In 4th place, Riccardo Patrese. In 5th place, Andrea De Cesaris in the Ligier. In 6th position, Michele Alboreto in the Ferrari. 7th is Senna, and in 8th position will be Elio De Angelis, 5 laps adrift.
Fourth is Riccardo Patrese with the Alfa, Andrea De Cesaris fifth for Ligier, Ayrton Senna de Silva his first championship point, sixth for Tolman.
6 Punkte für Prost, 4 Punkte für Warwick, 3 Punkte für Patrese, 2 Punkte für De Cesaris und 1 Punkt, sein erster Weltmeisterschaftspunkt, für den jungen Brasilianer Ayrton Senna da Silva. Lauda McLaren, Prost McLaren, Warwick Renault, Patrese Alfa Romeo. Vierter Platz, genau wie Eddie Cheever, sein Teamkollege vierter in Rio war. De Cesaris in seinem zweiten Rennen für Ligier Fünfter und Ayrton Senna in seinem erst zweiten Grand Prix bereits 1 Punkt für die Weltmeisterschaft. Doppelführung für McLaren auch nach 2 Läufen zur Weltmeisterschaft. Prost 15, Lauda 9, Rosberg 6, De Angelis und Warwick je 4, Patrese und Cheever je 3, Brundle und De Cesaris je 2, Tambay und Senna 1 Punkt. Unglaublich. Erster Lauda, zweiter Prost. Ich glaube, eine Sternstunde für den österreichischen Sport heute in Kyalami. Schauen Sie die Überlegenheit von McLaren in der Parallelwertung der Konstrukteure an. 24 Punkte. Das ist 4-mal so viel als die nächsten Gegner. Williams und Alfa Romeo mit je 6 Punkten. Dann Renault 5, Lotus 4, Tyrrell und Ligier je 2. Und das berühmte große Ferrari-Team nur 1 Punkt. Es ist Niki Laudas dritter Sieg für McLaren. Vor 2 Jahren hat er ja 2 Rennen gewinnen können. Long Beach und selbstverständlich Brands Hatch. Hier in Kyalami der dritte Sieg, wo Niki Laudas Karriere nach seiner 2-jährigen Unterbrechung wieder begonnen hat, vor 2 Jahren, mit dem für die Fachwelt enorm überraschenden 4. Platz. Aber Lauda ist in Kyalami immer gut gefahren, ich habe es Ihnen zwischendurch oft genug gesagt. Und das heute war sicherlich die Krönung. In Rio war es so, dass Niki Lauda versucht hat, Alain Prost um mindestens 15 Sekunden wegzufahren, um für die letzten 5 Runden keinen Ärger mehr zu bekommen. Und heute war es so, dass der Vorsprung schon so groß war, dass Alain Prost sicherlich resigniert haben muss. Zu überlegen war Niki Lauda heute und zu groß war bereits sein Vorsprung. Der nächste Grand Prix, bravo Niki Lauda, hier haben Sie ihn. Er hat heute, glaube ich, besonders eilig. Er möchte mit dem Hubschrauber, der schon gebucht ist, so schnell er kann zum Flugplatz nach Johannesburg. Alain Prost hat gratuliert als Dritter auf dem Siegespodest. Rechts der neue Renault-Fahrer Derek Warwick. Das sind seine ersten Punkte für Renault. Lauda, Prost und Warwick sicherlich die 3 stärksten Fahrer der beiden ersten Rennen 1984. Wie gesagt, Lauda hat ziemlich eilig, Hubschrauber zum Flugplatz. Dann fliegt er nach Zürich. Dann Ibiza, jetzt die Frage an Prost hat wohl bedeutet, sag, was war mit dir eigentlich los am Start? Prost hat ihm irgendwas gesagt oder am Gelächter ist fast anzunehmen, dass Lauda gesagt hat, wo warst denn du die ganze Zeit? Die österreichische Bundeshymne für Niki Lauda in Kyalami. Seit 2 Jahren haben wir in der Formel 1 keine österreichische Bundeshymne mehr gehört. Niki Lauda bekommt zum 3. Mal in seiner Karriere den Kyalami-Siegerpokal, der vor einer Woche noch spurlos verschwunden war. Von Dieben entwendet, man ist ihnen rechtzeitig auf die Spur gekommen und ich habe schon vor einer Woche Niki Lauda gefragt, wer wollte dir da eigentlich schon deinen Pokal wegschnappen? Großartiger Doppelsieg für McLaren. Erster Lauda, zweiter Prost. Moment. Dritter Derek Warwick. Die Fehlzündungen, die Niki Lauda heute noch im Aufwärmtraining gehabt hat, zwischen 7000 und 8500 Umdrehungen, dürften sich also im Rennen glücklicherweise nicht mehr wiederholt haben. Souvenir der Sieger. 20. Grand Prix-Sieg für Niki Lauda nach einem überlegenen Rennen in Kyalami in Südafrika, das er von der 21. bis zur 76. Runde von der Spitze weg kontrolliert hat. Die Begeisterung um Niki Lauda in Kyalami ist groß. Es sind fast Szenen, wie wir sie vom Autodrom in Monza gewohnt sind. Viele begeisterte Zuschauer. Und ich glaube, das McLaren-Team blickt jetzt in eine sehr rosige Zukunft. Man wird sich auf den Lorbeeren allerdings keineswegs ausruhen, denn die nächsten Testfahrten beginnen schon am Mittwoch in Zolder in Belgien. Am Mittwoch wird Niki Lauda testen, am Donnerstag wird Alain Prost die Tests fortführen. Dann gibt es am 29. April den großen Preis von Belgien in Zolder als dritten Lauf zur diesjährigen Weltmeisterschaft. Und dann kommt der vierte Lauf in Imola gleich eine Woche später. Lauda, Prost, Warwick, Patrese, De Cesaris und Senna, die ersten 6 in Kyalami. 2 Italiener in den Punkterängen.